What if the whole town watched you being dragged away, and not one person dared to help you, until one man stepped forward? Dust spun through the empty street of Sweetwater as Grace Nichols fought to free herself from the two large men, pulling her toward a weather-beaten wagon. Their hands were rough, their grip like iron clamps on her arms. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hardly hear anything else. She had come to Wyoming to build a new life, but now it felt like her future was slipping away with every step they forced her to take. Sweetwater, Wyoming Territory, 1878. A land where dreams were made, but just as often stolen. Grace had arrived only 3 weeks earlier with her hopes packed into a small suitcase. She wanted to become a school teacher, to stand on her own feet far from Boston, where her wealthy parents had tried to control her life. When her father arranged a marriage to settle his debts, Grace had run from that fate. She thought she had escaped. She thought she was free. She was wrong. "Get in the wagon, woman," the taller man growled. His breath smelled like whiskey left too long in the sun. "Your daddy sold you fair and square. Mr. Harrington paid good money. We got the papers to prove it." Grace twisted her wrist, trying to pull free, but the pain shot up her arm. "I am not property," she cried. "You cannot do this. I never agreed to anything." The scarred man beside him laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Ain't up to you. Harrington's been waitin' on you. Now we're takin' you to him." People stood on the boardwalk, watching but doing nothing. Women turned away, grabbing their children. Men stared at their boots. Everyone knew who Harvey Harrington was, the cattle baron who owned half the land for miles. No one dared stand against him. Grace's blue dress was torn from the struggle. Dirt streaked her skirt. Her honey-blonde hair fell loose around her shoulders. She looked like a woman fighting the whole world alone. "Please," she whispered, looking at the people around her. "Someone help me." No one moved. They dragged her closer to the wagon, its dark red boards chipped and cracked from years of hauling cattle. The driver sat stiffly on the bench, holding the reins of 2 bay horses. He didn't even look at her. Then the sound came, a soft jingle. The crowd shifted, heads turned. A man walked forward with slow, measured steps, each one sending the soft ring of spurs through the street. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd faced danger before and never once backed down. "Seems to me the lady isn't interested in your travel arrangements," a deep voice said. Grace turned. A cowboy stood a few paces away, the sun behind him, making his figure glow in golden light. She could see the broad shoulders, the strong stance, and then the star pinned to his vest. Sheriff Samuel Reed. The taller man spat at the dirt. "This ain't your business, Sheriff." Reed stepped closer, pushing his hat back so she could see his eyes. Sharp blue eyes set in a sun-worn face. A thin scar ran along his jaw. He looked calm, but there was a warning in the way his hand rested near his gun. "When 2 grown men drag a woman down my street," Reed said, "it becomes my business real fast." Quote, "We got papers," the scarred man argued. "Her daddy sold her to Harrington. Legal and binding." "In Wyoming Territory," Sheriff Reed replied, "we don't recognize ownership of human beings. I don't care what paper you're holding." "Let the lady go." Tension tightened the air. Grace felt it like a rope pulled too tight, ready to snap. "Harrington won't like this," the taller man warned, but his grip loosened a little. "Harrington doesn't make the law here," Reed said. "I do." After a long, heavy moment, the men finally released her. Grace stumbled forward. Sheriff Reed caught her by the elbow, steadying her gently. "You all right, miss?" he asked softly. She nodded, though she wasn't sure she could even speak. "Thank you," she whispered. The scarred man pulled a folded paper from his vest. "We got proof. Nichols sold his daughter to pay off a $2,000 debt." Sheriff Reed took the paper, staying close to Grace as he read it. The muscle in his jaw tightened. "This paper is worthless," Reed said. "A father can't sell his grown daughter. Not here, not anywhere in the United States." "She's coming with us," the man snapped, reaching for his holster. Reed's eyes hardened. "I wouldn't do that," he warned. unless you're looking to spend the night in my jail or in the cemetery." Silence fell. Finally, the men backed away and climbed into the wagon. The driver snapped the reins, and the wagon rolled off in a cloud of dust. Grace stood trembling, her breath uneven. Sheriff Reed stayed beside her until she steadied herself. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" he asked. Grace nodded. "A small room above the mercantile." "They won't trouble you tonight," Reed said, "but tomorrow we talk." Harrington isn't a man who gives up. The people watching slowly drifted away. Reed offered his arm. "May I walk you to your lodgings, Miss Nichols?" Grace hesitated only a moment before taking his arm. His steady presence eased something inside her. "Sheriff," she asked quietly, "is it true? That paper, it means nothing." Reed's voice softened. "You're not responsible for your father's debts, and no one owns you." Quote. A small breath escaped her, half a sob. As they reached the mercantile steps, Reed tipped his hat. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we figure out how to keep Harrington from bothering you again." Grace watched him walk away, the setting sun outlining his tall frame. Something in her chest tightened, a mixture of fear, gratitude, and something she couldn't yet name. One thing was certain. The moment Sheriff Samuel Reed stepped between her and that wagon, her life changed forever. What if running for your life was the only choice you had left? Grace Nichols barely slept that night. Every sound in the old building made her jump. Every creak of the floorboards, every wind gust rattling the window, felt like Harrington's men coming back for her. By morning, her eyes were tired, but her resolve was firm. She dressed in her best blue skirt and white shirtwaist, hoping to look composed when she met Sheriff Reed again. She stepped into the bright Wyoming morning and walked toward the sheriff's office. The town was quiet, but she felt eyes on her. Sweetwater remembered what happened yesterday. Everyone did. She reached the small wooden building with "Sheriff" painted on the door. Her hand trembled slightly as she knocked. "Come in," came Reed's steady voice. Grace stepped inside. The office was neat and orderly. A large desk sat near the window, maps pinned to the walls, and a gun rack stood behind the sheriff's chair. Reed rose when she entered, removing his hat. "Miss Nichols," he said gently, "please sit." Grace took the chair opposite his desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Have you heard anything from Mr. Harrington?" she asked. Reed shook his head. "Not yet, but he will make a move soon." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me the truth about the arrangement with your father. Everything." Grace swallowed. Shame and hurt knotted inside her. "My father's bank failed 6 months ago. He lost everything. Our home, his reputation, everything he had built. I knew we were in trouble, but I never believed he would." Her voice broke. "Sell me to settle a debt." Reed's jaw clenched. "You were 22. Your father had no right." Quote. "That didn't stop him," Grace whispered. Reed's voice softened. "None of this is your fault, and I won't let Harrington take you." Grace looked up, hope flickering inside her. "What should I do?" "For now," Reed said, "I think you should leave Sweetwater." Grace's heart dropped. "And go where? I have almost no money." Reed straightened. "I know someone who can help. A friend, Eliza Blackwood. She's a widow who runs a ranch about 20 miles north. She's been needing a teacher for the ranch hand's children. It would be safe there." Grace blinked. "Do you think she would hire me?" "I'll write you a letter of introduction," Reed said, already reaching for paper. Grace watched him as he wrote. His handwriting was strong and sure. His shoulders were broad beneath his vest. His hair, dark with a touch of gray at the temples, made him look older and wiser in a way that comforted her. She hadn't felt safe since leaving Boston, not until he had pulled her away from that wagon. Reed folded the letter and sealed it. "The stage passes through at noon. It'll drop you near Willow Creek Ranch." Grace nodded, though fear twisted inside her. "Thank you." Reed stood. "Grace," he stopped, corrected himself. "Miss Nichols, I'll check on you once the situation is settled." Before she could speak, the door burst open. A young deputy stood in the doorway, breathless. "Sheriff, Harrington just rode into town with a dozen men. They're coming this way." Reed's eyes hardened instantly. He stood so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. "Miss Nichols, go out the back door. My horse is saddled behind the jail. Take him. Ride north along the creek bed. Don't stop until you reach Willow Creek." Grace felt her limbs turn cold. "Sheriff, I can't leave you." Reed stepped close, his voice low and firm. "I will handle Harrington, but he won't stop if he sees you here. Go, now." Her heart hammered. She grabbed the letter and map, hurried to the back door, and ran. Behind the jail stood a tall bay gelding. Grace hesitated only a second before pulling herself into the saddle. She hadn't ridden in years, but fear made her steady. Shouts echoed from the sheriff's office. Harrington had arrived. Grace urged the horse forward. The creek bed gave her cover as she rode. The horse moved swiftly, its hooves splashing through the shallow water. Sunlight beat down on her. Her hands blistered from gripping the reins. Her legs ached. She felt small and exposed in the vast Wyoming land. Hours passed before she found shade under a stand of cottonwoods. She slid from the saddle and nearly fell. Her breath shook as she drank from the spring and let the horse drink too. When she finally mounted again, her body felt sore, but she pushed on. She had to reach Willow Creek. By late afternoon, rolling hills appeared. Trees grew thicker. In a green valley below, she spotted a cluster of ranch buildings. Willow Creek Ranch. A tall, lean woman stepped onto the porch, shading her eyes. "Can I help you, miss?" Grace slid off the horse awkwardly. "Mrs. Blackwood?" "Sheriff Reed sent me." Her voice cracked from thirst and exhaustion. "Samuel Reed sent you?" "Then I guess we better get you inside," Mrs. Blackwood said firmly. "You look ready to fall over." Inside the ranch house, Grace was given coffee and a chair to rest. Mrs. Blackwood read Reed's letter and nodded. "We need a teacher. You can stay. But first, you need rest." Grace blinked back tears of relief. "Thank you." For the next 3 days, Grace taught ranch children in a small schoolroom. She tried to focus, but worry for Sheriff Reed haunted her. No word came from Sweetwater. Every distant hoofbeat made her heart jump. Then, on the 4th morning, she heard horses in the yard. Fear struck her. Harrington. He had found her. She rushed to the window and saw Sheriff Reed. Grace's breath caught. He was alive. He carried a bruise on his cheekbone, but otherwise, he looked strong. Mrs. Blackwood greeted him warmly. Grace hurried outside. "Sheriff," she said, breathless, "I'm so relieved you're safe." "Most safe," he said with a faint smile. Harrington tried to push back, but we held him off. Her joy quickly faded when she saw the seriousness in his eyes. "It's not over," Reed said quietly. "Harrington filed a complaint with the territorial court. He still wants to claim you." Grace felt her stomach twist. "Can he win?" "I won't let that happen," Reed replied. "I've contacted a lawyer in Cheyenne. We'll fight this." Mrs. Blackwood stepped up. "You both come inside. We can talk over coffee." At the table, Reed explained everything. Harrington was desperate. His ranch was failing. He needed something, someone, to show he still had control. That made him more dangerous. Grace wrapped her hands around her cup. "What should I do?" "Stay here," Reed said. "You're safe with Mrs. Blackwood's people. We'll sort it out legally." Grace nodded slowly. "Safe, at least for now." Reed stood to leave. "I should get back to town. There's still work to do." Grace walked him to his horse. The sunlight lit the silver in his hair. Her heart tightened. "Sheriff, thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Reed hesitated, then met her eyes. "Some things are worth standing up for." She felt warmth spread through her chest. "Please be careful," she whispered. "I always am," he replied. But the slight smile he gave her said he heard the worry behind her words. He mounted and rode away, leaving Grace watching until he disappeared into the hills. She didn't know it yet, but the fight was just beginning. What if the one man, willing to protect you, was now the only thing standing between you and real danger? 2 weeks passed at Willow Creek Ranch, and in that time Grace found a fragile sense of peace. She taught the ranch children every morning, helped Mrs. Blackwood with chores, and learned the rhythm of ranch life. The wide Wyoming sky began to feel familiar. The hills, the creek, even the wind felt less frightening than before. But one fear never left her. Harrington. Even with Sheriff Reed's reassurances, Grace knew the cattle baron was not a man who gave up easily. Twice, riders were spotted near the ranch. Mrs. Blackwood's men chased them off, but the warnings were clear. Sheriff Reed visited when he could. Each time he brought news about the case, and each time Grace felt a wave of relief seeing him unharmed. Their talks grew longer. Their walks along the creek became natural. Grace found herself opening up about her past, her dreams. Reed shared his own stories about Ohio and the parents he had lost. Their connection deepened quietly, steadily. One late afternoon, they walked together near the creek. The sunset painted the valley in soft, orange light. "I never meant to stay in one town this long," Reed said. "But Sweetwater, it has a way of grabbing hold." "It grabbed hold of me too," Grace admitted. They shared a quiet smile. Reed stopped walking and turned to her. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Nothing harsh, nothing guarded. Something warm. Before she could ask what he was thinking, a rifle shot cracked through the valley. Reed reacted instantly. He grabbed Grace and pulled her behind a large rock as more shots echoed around them. Grace's heart pounded so hard she could hardly breathe. "Harrington's men," Reed said. His voice was calm, but urgent. "Stay down." Grace felt the cold stone against her back as another bullet hit somewhere behind them. Reed peeked over the rock, then fired back with controlled precision. Shouts came from the hills. Men were closing in. "We need to move," Reed said. "The creek bed will hide us. Stay close." He grabbed her hand and pulled her along the shallow water, both of them crouched low. The icy water soaked her boots and skirt, but fear made her ignore the cold. More shots cracked through the valley, answered by the ranch hands rushing into position. When they reached the ranch yard, Mrs. Blackwood stood on the porch holding a shotgun. Ranch hands were already taking cover behind wagons and fences. "The children?" Grace gasped. "In the root cellar," Mrs. Blackwood replied. "We're holding them off." The gunfire faded slowly. Harrington's men, realizing they were outnumbered, withdrew deeper into the hills. But their threats hung in the air. "That was no warning," Mrs. Blackwood said. "They meant to take her today." Grace trembled as Reed placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "That's the last time they'll get close," Reed said. "The court hearing is in 3 days. We'll settle this for good." That night, after making sure the ranch was secure, Reed found Grace sitting on the porch steps. The moon cast a pale glow across the valley. "You should go back to Sweetwater," she said softly. "They're after me. I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Reed stepped closer, his eyes steady. "Grace, I'm not leaving you alone. Harrington wants control. He won't get it." "But what if he comes again?" she whispered. "Then I'll protect you," Reed said. "Whatever it takes." Her eyes filled with tears. The fear, the running, the uncertainty, everything she had held inside for weeks, finally broke loose. She covered her face with her hands and cried. Reed knelt in front of her and gently pulled her into his arms. She felt the warmth of him, the strength of him, and for the first time, she let herself lean into it. "You've been brave," Reed said quietly. "Braver than anyone realizes." Grace lifted her head. Their faces were close, the moonlight soft on his features. "Samuel," she whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. She didn't. She rose slightly to meet him, and their lips touched in a gentle kiss that deepened with a feeling neither of them had spoken aloud until now. When they finally parted, Grace felt something new inside her. Hope. Real hope. 3 days later, the court hearing was held in Sweetwater. The courtroom was filled with people, eager to see what would happen. Harrington sat stiffly beside his lawyer, glaring across the room. Grace sat with her attorney, Mr. Duncan, and Sheriff Reed behind her, a silent wall of support. The arguments went back and forth. Harrington's lawyer claimed the arrangement was a legal marriage agreement. Mr. Duncan countered that Grace was an adult and no one could force her into marriage. Judge Parker listened patiently, examining the papers and the timeline. Finally, he set the documents down. "This agreement," Judge Parker said, "attempts to bind a free woman into a union without her consent. It has no legal standing. Therefore, it is null and void." Grace felt her breath leave her in a rush. She heard Reed exhale behind her, but the judge was not done. Furthermore, he continued, Mr. Harrington's attempts to forcibly take Miss Nichols are unlawful. Any further effort to contact or pursue her will result in jail time. Harrington's jaw clenched. This isn't over, he muttered. Reed stepped forward. Yes, it is. When Grace and Reed stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight, she felt like the world had finally opened up. No threat, no debt, no fear. What will you do now? Reed asked gently. Grace looked up at him. Mrs. Blackwood wants me to stay as the ranch's teacher. She paused, then added softly, but I don't want to be 20 miles away. Reed's eyes warmed. No? No, Grace said. Not if it means seeing a certain sheriff only once in a while. Reed took her hand. Is that something you want? To stay near me? Grace nodded. Very much. He swallowed, emotion flickering across his face. The town council needs a school, and I have a house that feels too big for one man. Grace's heart fluttered. Samuel, are you saying what I think you're saying? He stepped closer, brushing her cheek with his thumb. I'm saying I want a life with you, if you'll have me. Grace kissed him, right there in the doorway of the courthouse. When they parted, she whispered, It feels like I just found home. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning, Grace Nichols became Grace Reed at Willow Creek Ranch. The town came to celebrate. Mrs. Blackwood hosted the wedding. The ranch children threw flower petals as Grace walked down the aisle. As she stood with Samuel beneath an arch of wildflowers, she realized how far she had come, from being dragged toward a wagon to choosing a future filled with love. I do, she said, looking into his steady blue eyes. I do, he answered, voice full of quiet truth. That night as they danced beneath lantern light, Samuel pulled her close and whispered, Any regrets about choosing Wyoming? Grace shook her head. None. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. With me, he asked softly. With you, she said, always. Quote, And under the bright Wyoming stars, Grace knew she had found her true home, not in a place but in the arms of the man who pulled her back when the world tried to take her away.